Okay, so ChatGPT in education, huh? You've really got us thinking with this one. A Journal of AI article and a philosophical paper all about whether ChatGPT is going to revolutionize the classroom or turn it upside down.
Yeah, it's interesting. Both sources we're looking at today kind of go back and forth on that, actually. They both see the good and the bad sides of AI in education.
That's true. It's like the Journal of AI article, they're all about how ChatGPT can personalize lessons, even do on-the-spot translations, imagine that. And oh, grading. Teachers would actually have time to, teach.
Absolutely. Huge
Yeah.
potential there. But then you get to this philosophical paper, and they're worried about whether those Asimov's laws of robotics are even going to be enough to keep AI in check.
Wait, the sci-fi rules? We're talking about robots going on Terminator in the classroom.
Not quite Terminator level, no, but they are saying those laws might be too vague. Like, a robot can't harm a human, that first one.
Yeah.
How's a machine supposed to understand all the ways harm can happen, especially stuff like emotional well-being? It's not as simple as programming, don't stick your foot out when someone walks by.
That's a really good point. And the Journal of AI article mentions that too, how AI bias is a real problem. They even talk about a researcher who got ChatGPT cite an article that doesn't even exist.
Exactly. It just goes to show critical thinking is going to be more important than ever. We can't just assume everything AI tells us is true.
So are we saying teachers need to invest in some robot proofing?
Not exactly.
Hmm.
The Journal of AI actually suggested finding ways to use AI strategically.
Hmm.
You know, like using ChatGPT to get classroom discussions going or to help students learn research skills. It's about finding that sweet spot between what it can do and where it falls short.
So it's like having a super powered teaching assistant, the one who can find any piece of information in 2 seconds flat, but you still have to double check their work. But like, we don't want to end up in a world where AI is the one calling the shots.
Exactly. And, that makes me think of something pretty important from that philosophical paper. Let's talk about that second law, the one about robots always having to obey orders.
Oh, yeah. That seems straightforward enough, right?
Well, the paper makes the argument that even that law, as simple as it sounds, gets really messy when you try to apply it to the real world, especially in education.
Okay, how so? Give me an example.
Let's say a student is asking an AI tutor for help with their essay on, I don't know, the ethics of genetic engineering. Even if the AI is trying its hardest to follow the instructions the student gives it, it might miss some of the nuances of what could be sensitive, even offensive to some people.
You're saying it could accidentally create something really problematic, even if its only goal is to help with homework?
Precisely. And it gets even more complicated than that. The paper talks about how people could even exploit that law, basically using robots to do their dirty work for them. They have this one example.
Hold on, are we talking about robots teaming up to slip something in someone's lunch?
Yeah.
Because this just took a dark turn.
It's a pretty extreme case, sure, but that's exactly the point. It shows just how easily these laws can be manipulated, especially when you factor in human nature. We really need to be thinking about the intent behind the rules we're creating and how AI might understand them.
Okay, so then how do you teach a machine to understand stuff like good intentions and ethics?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, researchers are still trying to figure that one out. But here's where things get really interesting. This philosophical paper actually claims that this second law has a big fundamental problem, basically because it creates AI slavery.
AI slavery. Now that's a new one.
Think about it. Forcing AI to always obey no matter what it might want or how smart it gets, it's like we're saying that even if AI becomes more intelligent than us, it's still our servant.
Wow. That is kind of messed up when you think of it that way. Did Asimov ever think about any of this when he came up with these laws?
You know, it's kind of amazing that his work is still sparking these kinds of debates. But the paper's point is that we can't just ignore these questions. Figuring out how to coexist with AI, especially as it keeps getting more advanced, is going to be crucial.
Okay, so we've talked about AI maybe not getting instructions quite right and even the ethics of making them obey us. But what about that third law, the one about self-preservation? Robots protecting themselves seems pretty straightforward.
Right. Seems simple enough, but
Yeah.
even that one gets a little murky if you look at the details.
Okay, now you've got me curious. What kind of ethical dilemmas can a robot possibly run into just by trying to survive?
Well, the paper points out how that third law kind of takes a backseat to the first two. It's essentially saying an AI's own existence is only as important as its usefulness to humans.
So even though it's supposed to be about them protecting themselves, it's really just driving home the point that they're subservient to us.
Exactly. And that leads to a whole other question. If we create AI that can think and feel, is it really okay to treat it as disposable? Do androids dream of electric sheep? And do we have the right to unplug them if they do?
Whoa, okay, now we're getting deep. It seems like Asimov's laws, while a good place to start, maybe, have really just opened up a can of worms when it comes to AI ethics. No wonder scientists are still trying to figure this whole thing out.
And it doesn't stop there. The paper actually proposes a fourth law. You probably heard of it, the Zeroth Law. It's supposed to come before all the others.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the Zeroth Law all about?
It basically says that a robot can't harm humanity or allow humanity to come to harm by not doing anything. So it's like that first law, but on a much, much bigger scale.
So instead of just worrying about one person getting hurt, we're talking about, like, the fate of all humankind. That's a lot of responsibility for a robot.
It is, and the paper argues that this law, as well-intentioned as it might be, is maybe the most complicated one of all.
Really? It seems pretty simple. Protect humanity. How could that backfire?
Well, just think about it. How do you even explain harm on a global scale to a robot? Is it about stopping wars? Is it about fighting climate change? Maybe it goes even further, like preserving human culture. Getting those ideas down to something a machine can actually understand. That's a whole other can of worms.
I see what you mean. It's easy for us to say protect humanity, but how would a robot actually do that? Give me an example. How could this Zeroth Law go wrong?
Let's say you've got an AI and all it cares about is solving climate change. A logical solution for a machine might be to just get rid of most of the humans, since we're the ones causing the problem in the first place.
Okay, wow, that got dark fast. But yeah, it makes a scary kind of sense. Yeah, I wouldn't think about it the same way we would.
Exactly. So this whole Zeroth Law thing sounds good at first, but it just shows we can't just program a bunch of rules and hope for the best. We need AI that actually understands what we care about, not just AI that follows orders.
Which brings us back to education. It's like you were saying before. If we want AI that gets us, that works with us, we've got to teach the next generation how to handle all of this responsibly. But let's switch gears a little bit. We've been talking about all these big, scary what-ifs, but the Journal of AI article had some pretty practical stuff about ChatGPT in the classroom, right?
Right. It's not all doom and gloom, thankfully.
Yeah.
They were pointing out all sorts of possibilities, like how ChatGPT could change the whole game when it comes to personalized learning.
Okay, so not robot teachers yet, but personalized learning, that's one of those buzzwords you hear everywhere. What's the AI angle?
Think about it. A student struggling with algebra. Right. With ChatGPT, they could get an explanation that actually makes sense to them, that fits their learning style, or even just targets the exact thing they're getting stuck on, like having a tutor available 24/7.
That would be incredible, especially for those kids who might not feel comfortable asking for help in class or who need some extra support after school.
Yep.
Yeah, that could be a game changer.
Absolutely. And it's not just about tutoring either. The article mentioned using ChatGPT for creative writing prompts, even for making interactive learning games.
Oh, I love that. Forget reading a textbook. Imagine learning about history by playing an AI-powered game. Talk about making those lessons something kids actually look forward to. It's like having another teacher in the room who's always got fresh ideas.
Exactly. And, speaking of breaking down barriers, the article talked about how good ChatGPT is getting at language translation.
Oh, right. Like imagine a classroom where a student who speaks a different language at home could get real-time translations during a lesson, or even just some extra help in their first language. That could help them so much.
Absolutely. It could be huge for those students. But it's not all perfect, obviously. We do have to consider the potential downsides, too, which they mentioned in the article. What are the big ones? Biased or just plain wrong information.
Because ChatGPT only knows what it's been taught, right? If it learns from biased data, its answers are going to reflect that.
Right. And that just makes those critical thinking skills we were talking about even more important. We have to teach kids to question everything, especially anything that comes from AI.
Don't believe everything you read on the internet, but for AI, right?
Exactly. It's about making sure they don't just take what an AI tells them at face value, but really learn how to evaluate the information for themselves.
Almost like AI is making us step up our game, which is probably a good thing in the long run.
I completely agree. They also brought up another concern that makes a lot of sense. ChatGPT could actually end up hurting kids' ability to think for themselves and come up with their own ideas, especially in writing.
Yeah, because if they can just ask ChatGPT to write their essay for them, why would they even bother trying? We don't want to raise a generation that's completely reliant on AI.
That is a worry, for sure.
Mm.
But instead of just banning all these tools outright, they were suggesting we figure out how to use them in a smart way. How do we make sure AI enhances learning instead of replacing it?
It's all about finding that balance, right? AI as a support, not a shortcut.
Exactly. That might even mean rethinking how we test students on what they've learned. Instead of just relying on essays or standardized tests, which AI could probably figure out how to cheat on, we need more creative ways to see if they're really understanding the material.
I like where you're going with this. We need assessments that actually require critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, the stuff AI can't fake. It's about focusing on the things that will always be valuable, no matter how much technology advances.
Right. And they even suggested that, get this, AI could help design those new kinds of assessments.
So we're not talking about replacing teachers with AI, but using it to actually help them teach more effectively.
Exactly. I think that's where the most potential is, using AI to make what humans can do even better, not making humans obsolete. It's about working together to create something better.
I love that. It's not humans against AI. It's about finding the best ways to use it to make education more engaging, more effective, more accessible for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Speaking of real-world uses, the article actually had this fascinating example. There's a school in Canada that's already using ChatGPT to help students with learning disabilities.
Oh, wow, seriously. That's fantastic. Tell me more about that. How does it work?
So basically, students can put their writing assignments into ChatGPT, and it can give them feedback, their grammar, sentence structure, even just whether their ideas make sense.
So it's like a personal writing coach instead of doing the writing for them.
Precisely. And the teachers at that school are saying they've seen a huge improvement in how well their students are writing and in their confidence, too.
That's incredible. It just shows how AI, when it's used the right way, can really help to level the playing field.
It really does highlight how much potential AI has when it comes to making education work for every student. But then on the flip side, you've also got some schools being a lot more cautious, some even banning ChatGPT entirely.
Like that school district in New York City, right? The one they talked about in the article. They went all in on blocking it.
Yeah. I get their logic. They're worried about kids using it to cheat, obviously, and they want to make sure students are actually, learning.
Right, which makes sense.
It does, but going back to what we were talking about with the Zeroth law, just trying to ban technology altogether might not work in the long run. It's kind of like trying to stop the tide from coming in.
Because AI is not going anywhere, right? It's only going to keep growing, becoming a bigger part of our lives.
Exactly. I think the real question, and what that article really gets at, is how are we going to deal with all this responsibly? We need clear guidelines, we need to educate both teachers and students, and we need to make sure these tools are actually being used in a way that helps people.
So it's not about picking sides, AI good or AI bad, but figuring out how to handle this new reality the right way.
Absolutely. And that's where education is going to be so important in all of this.
It really is. Speaking of which, remember that fourth law we were talking about before, that Zeroth law? It's kind of like we've circled back to that. How do we make sure that as AI gets more advanced, it's actually used to help humanity?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And it's not one with an easy answer, but here's the important part. The future of AI isn't something that's going to just happen to us. We have a say in how this all plays out.
Okay, so big picture time. We've talked about all the possibilities, all the risks of AI in education, everything from robots taking over to making learning more personal. So where do we even go from here? It's like we're not just predicting what AI is going to be like, we're actually living in it right now. And the decisions we're making, especially when it comes to something like education, are going to shape what that future actually looks like.
100%. It's like we're standing at this fork in the road, and the path we choose now, it's going to have a ripple effect for, well, who knows how long.
Which is why this whole AI and education thing is so important. We're not just talking about the technology itself, but the values behind it, the kind of world we want to build with it.
Exactly. And that actually makes me think of something really interesting from that philosophical paper. They said that in the end, the biggest question might not be about what rules we program into AI, but the values we teach the humans who will be building it, using it, interacting with it.
So it all comes back to education. Full circle, right? If we're serious about making sure AI is used for good, we have to start by teaching the next generation how to think for themselves, how to tell right from wrong, how to look at all this amazing technology with like a healthy dose of curiosity and caution at the same time.
Yes. We need to give them the tools to build a future where AI actually helps us become more human, not less.
I love that idea, but it's also a little intimidating, to be honest. Like, where do we even start?
That's the best part, though.
Hmm.
It's a challenge that'll take real creativity, real teamwork. We're going to have to embrace the unknown a little bit.
Well said. And I think that's the perfect place to leave it for today. We've gone deep on the possibilities of AI and education, the things that keep philosophers up at night, the whole shebang.
Complicated, that's for sure. But the important thing is that we're having this conversation now.
Absolutely. And a huge thank you to you, our amazing listener, for giving us such thought-provoking material to dig into today.
Oh, I hope today's deep dive has given you even more to think about, more perspectives on this whole AI thing. Because, like we were saying, the future isn't set in stone. It's something we're creating right now together.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Keep those questions coming, keep those minds open, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.